when Tucker Carlson was on Fox News, he already showed what kind of a person and what kind of a thinker, if you want to use that word for him, he is when saying things like, using full-on Marxist language when talking about Amazon exploiting their workers, or when making this statement, quote, almost every nation on earth has fallen under the yoke of tyranny, the metric system. That's an actual quote from Tucker Carlson. Once he no longer had to abide by whatever editorial oversight there is at Fox News, we saw a bit more of him in the first episode of his then Twitter, or was it already X, show. He talked about other than showing his support for Russia. He also talked about aliens. The aliens are here, in case you didn't know. Tucker has brought that news forth. But now that he's much of what he does is, should we say, criticize Israel. That's a very kind way of putting it. He has some interesting friends, and yeah, guess who came to his defense most recently? Our good friend Anna Kasparian, Cenk Uyghur's number two in the Young Turks. Should we roll the first clip?
Sorry, can you hear it?
I can't hear it either, but I also see that people in the chat can't hear it, Daniel. So that's Tucker Carlson talking, often better seen than heard. But yeah, well, I will use this opportunity to say welcome to the reality show, day 195 of the war in Israel. If we have the sound ready, then let's try again.
A consistent but almost never noted theme of American foreign policy is that it is always the Christians who suffer. When there's a war abroad that the United States is funding, it is Christians who tend to die disproportionately. There is virtually never a word about the Christians who live there, the ancient Christian community in Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel proper.
Yeah, so this particular iteration of the ongoing series, Tucker Carlson being an idiot, was already discussed on this show. But what's interesting here is the response from Anna Kasparian. But let me just go to my co-panelists to see if there's any opening remarks on this. Richard.
Okay, well, what I want to say about this is that it feels like a case of mirrors looking at mirrors and reflecting off into the distance in both directions, as the left looks at the right and the right looks at the right. And what we have to do, I think, in order to be not an additional mirror, just reflecting back as well, is to make sure we draw back and look at the full political spectrum and draw out the premises and principles that are at work here in order to understand what's going on. Because it's fascinating how the two sides can unite on the same thing for different reasons, but that doesn't mean that they agree. It just means that bad premises can lead to the same dodgy conclusion, but all that proves is that they both got bad premises. It doesn't mean the conclusion is right. The conclusion here being that Israel and the Jews are wrong in everything they do, as we shall see in the course of this. So I think what's happening in the course of what Anna's going to say is she's throwing a bone to her political opponent, in this case Tucker, because he happens to be shining a spotlight on something she agrees with, a single concrete she agrees with, which is that Israel is in the wrong. And that is no proof of anything. It's the same case as when you see people supporting Jonathan Glazer's speech at the Oscars, for example, or Jews hating Jews, or Queers for Palestine. Just because another group happens to agree with you, you think that's proof that you're in the right, and yeah, proves nothing.
Yeah, you think you're in the right, and you're probably in the left. Anyway, just to give a bit of a context, about 10 days ago, we actually discussed it a week ago, like he has, on this channel. Carlton, the clickbaity demagogue of our time, invited a Lutheran evangelical Christian from the Palestinian Authority-infested city of Bethlehem to effectively indulge in anti-Semitic tropes. The priests often engage in Palestinian bingo by using words like genocide, apartheid, innocent people, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And he kept whinging about Jews attacking Christians. Now, that's fine, but he also ignored the fact that right now, Christians are being attacked in India, Nigeria, Pakistan, Myanmar, not to talk about Lebanon, Iran, and just a few days ago in Austria, a priest got stabbed in the face. But, you know, we ignore that. It's the Jews travel a lot, apparently, so we don't care about that. Unfortunately, this video aged really badly. I think it came out last Friday. Because she says stupid things like Israel is careless in a bombing. Well, compared to the Iranian bombing, you know, terrible.
Alejandro.
I want to say that one of these distinctive comments of Tucker Carlson is how lobotomized his audience should be, that you can say that Christianity suffering is something that hasn't happened before. Tucker, in Christianity, suffering is a feature, not a bug. People look for it. People want it. People are eager to suffer. Do you know the story of Peter? Do you know the story of Paul? Do you know the story of Jesus? Throughout Christian history, everyone who has wanted to be someone in the culture has wanted to be seen as suffering, as a martyr, as someone who gets along some of the punches. Now, for him, it's too bad because it's essentially our members of his tribe, and that's enough for him and his acolytes. But in essence, I think it's really stupid. And what is embarrassing is that that's one of the criticisms that he will get in the course of the video.
Yeah, there's also the point that this is bullshit. You know, Israel isn't targeting Christians. The one country in the Middle East where people are not targeted for you know, their religion, for being of the wrong religion, or you know, or for many other reasons, is Israel. So but yeah, like you said, Alejandro, you know, Tucker isn't aiming, like many of these people, his target audience is not the best among humanity. It's the absolute worst that you can at least figure out how to open Twitter.
Sorry, of course, Tucker, all the Christians he could have had in the show, he chooses a Lutheran, because we all know that Martin Luther was a rabid anti-Semitic. So who best to represent the species? I mean,
all right, should we listen to Anna?
We must.
No.
Tucker Carlson is getting a lot of backlash from his fellow conservatives after he decided to conduct an interview with a Palestinian Lutheran pastor by the name of Dr. Munther Isaac. You might be familiar with him. We actually did cover a few stories involving him. He's a pastor in Bethlehem, and during Christmas, he was the one who had Jesus surrounded by, like a little Jesus doll surrounded by rubble, to basically draw attention to what Palestinians in Gaza are facing. He did that in lieu of a nativity scene, and so he has gotten some press attention in the past, but
Richard.
So that last line, he's got some press attention in the past. Now, what does that mean? It probably means that on the Young Turks, they probably covered this with enormous glee. the fact that a Palestinian was sticking it to some Christians and highlighting the Gazan situation from their perspective. So she's quoting it in a very careful way there, as she's going to do throughout this interview. And I think that's is particularly telling how she does it. I think it introduces the guy well enough, though, to us, and we'll see more of that later on.
Yeah, also introduces her commentary, because it's very cute the way she actually goes out of her way to specify that the Jesus surrounded by the rubble in the Christmas thing wasn't actually a real Jesus, was a doll. So fear not, he didn't use the real Jesus.
Alejandro?
Nothing as subjective as a guy who believes in ghosts and well, he doesn't believe in saints, so he's pardoned. But he believes in an imaginary friend who tells him stories. So good enough.
And yeah, as far as Anna is concerned, you know, again, this episode is about how much the left and the right, or the elements among the left and the elements among the right, will forgive each other as long as they're united in their war against the one Jewish state. All right, let's continue.
We continue to be horrified by what we hear from Congress, with, of course, some exceptions. There are some in the Democratic side. Of course, Rashida Tlaib comes from a Palestinian heritage.
So, I mean, what's interesting there is I said earlier, you know, Tucker is better seen and not heard. I guess this is an example of that, because you can see on his face, or it proves the opposite. I'm not sure which one, but you can see on his face, you know, this is what the right in America, much of the right, has become. Going from, you know, after 9/11, having this at least pretense of, you know what, we have an enemy. That enemy is motivated by Islam, and we need to fight them. To, you know what, yeah, Rashida Tlaib would probably make America kind of a Muslim country if she could, but you know what, she also hates the Jews. So yeah, I'm gonna sit there and hear her being praised on my show and let that go unchallenged. That is what we're seeing here. Richard.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem of not thinking in principles, isn't it? You found someone who you agree with on this particular issue, so you've got them on, then you suddenly realize that they mentioned somebody else who you totally disagree with, but you can't point that out, because then you're pointing out that that is not a way of coming to any conclusion. It's just finding someone who happens to agree with you on one particular subject. So it exposes his own problem right at the time. So the best thing to do is to shut up. So that's what he's chosen to do. But of course, it speaks for itself, doesn't it? It speaks for itself that it's a deafening silence when he should be pointing out why Rashida Tlaib shouldn't even be in Congress, let alone you know, seeing her praised on his own show.
And of course, he's too busy trying to bolster groups and trying to split the opinion in America, because if he can just wedge the suggestion that Israel is doing something wrong and try and split the public opinion into his favor, first of all, he gets more clicks, so he's going to be a happy man. And second, he doesn't really care what happened to Israel, as long as his political faction gets you know, they go ahead to do whatever they want. And of course, during this really pragmatic set of actions, is just ignoring the fact that we have a civilized country has been attacked by a bunch of savages. That's the essential you should focus on, and that's essential that it should make you realize that America should be on the side of the civilization in the Middle East.
Yeah, Richard, I'm not sure, you know, this is someone he disagrees with on everything else, but I mean, Rashida Tlaib, because again, when he said Amazon is exploiting their workers, I'm sure she would agree, maybe for different reasons. I thought at the time, and I don't remember if I actually saw something from Tucker that confirmed this, but I thought it's probably because Jeff Bezos, owns the Washington Post, right, which is a left-wing newspaper. So probably that might be an issue with it. But of course, I think it very much fits with his other views as well. I don't know where Rashida Tlaib stands on the metric system, so I don't know what if they're in agreement on that. But yeah, it's elements of the right, very much fit with some of the ideas of the left, and I think we've been seeing that for a while, and I think we're seeing that more when it comes to the Israel topic. Alejandro.
What I take from this and what it's interesting is that this was similar to what happened with the Putin interview, and that is he thinks that Christianity is a big tribe, and because it's a big tribe, then the talking points of the tribe are going to be the same all across the world. And whenever he tries to bring these talking points, he ends up hearing things that he wasn't expecting to hear. I mean, on the one hand, it reveals how blatantly lazy he is as a reporter, but it also reveals how essentially he is able to his audience is able to swallow everything that comes over.
Next clip. I don't remember if I had something to add about that, because at some point I'm like, I don't know what to say. Letting somebody praise Rashida Tlaib speaks for itself. Yeah, let's continue, and if I have something more, I'll mention it later.
See, there is a very, very brutal war taking place in Gaza, a war that I've described using the word genocide, because it's a war that has used even starvation as a mean, and fellow Christians are suffering because of that war.
Yeah, Richard.
Okay. Well, why is this clip being shown again? This is a clip on Tucker's show, and this is being shown again on the Young Turk show. Why? Because they like the message, they like the narrative of this clip. This is the truth that they're interested in showing, and they're interested in showing the fact that somebody from the right, Tucker, is also showing this clip, and that in their mind gives it extra weight. And it's simply because somebody else is throwing dirt at the same victim as you are doesn't make that right. It doesn't make it true. It doesn't make it the way you should do things. So it's more of the same.
Yeah, again, as I said earlier, this guy uses all the pro-Palestinian words, all concept raped by him in order to make the Palestinian case. Everything he says, it's just to highlight how terrible Israel is and how good the Palestinians are. Such nice people. Those people in Gaza that left their home just to go and hurt somebody in Israel. That was really a Christian. I mean, as Alejandro said, how can you even listen to somebody who claims that knowledge comes from a big ghost in the sky? This guy doesn't even know what truth and reality is. So, everything he tried to allege is just as pathetic as he is, really.
Alejandro.
Well, this is irrefutable proof that Christianity and the West can, and in my view, are incompatible. Because essentially you're having all the anti-Western talking points put in the mouth of this guy who should be, according to conservatives of today, like this champion of the Western world and the defender of everything that we stand for. And instead, I don't see any significant difference between him and most of the anti-Western talking points in the world.
One thing I wonder about Tucker, and I don't like it when people make this point, oh, you're doing this because you get money from it or whatever, because, people, are support a cause and can also be paid, and it doesn't mean that they don't mean it. But in his case, I keep thinking of Alex Jones because Alex Jones left a gap in the market, and I think Tucker Carlson is one of the people filling that gap. And Alex Jones admitted in court, right, that he's bullshitting his audience, that basically what he's doing is entertainment and not actually presenting any facts. And so with Tucker, I wonder if, to what extent when he got kicked out of Fox, even though he was super popular just because of the stuff that came out, he thought, okay, well, there's a big chunk of the audience that will buy my bullshit the further out there it is, and so I should make sure it's further out there. Including but that's one point. And then we look at this specific point, which is definitely out there, the idea that Israel right now in Gaza is targeting Christians. But then you see how many people from across the board, so to speak, kind of lower their standards in order and end up agreeing with him or defending him, even in part because it fits whatever narrative it is that they want to push. And before we go to the next clip, Gwen says, Tucker Carlson has lost all credibility with me after this horrible interview. This was the last straw. Really, this was the last. Did you hear the metric system thing? That's from like, I don't remember how many years ago. So yeah, Tucker Carlson was has been like this for a while, and now we're just seeing different different aspects of it. All right, let's play some more of the clip.
Quite honestly, the way I hear people talk about Palestinians, it's almost as if their lives don't matter. They're not as important, right? It's worth taking out entire families if Israel suspects that there's a single Hamas militant hiding among them. And that to me, again, really communicates to the world, okay, well, the lives of those innocent Palestinian civilians just don't matter enough or don't matter as much. Would the IDF do the same thing if there was a family of Israeli civilians who were being held hostage by a single Hamas militant? Would they just bomb that house? I mean, I doubt it.
Does it not maybe communicate to Anna something about what she calls militant surrounding himself with so-called innocent civilians? What that militant thinks about those civilians, or what the civilians think themselves for not fighting back against the savages who murder in their name? I guess not. Richard.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what can you say about that? I mean, there's so much wrong with that logic and that statement. It's just hard to know where to begin pulling it apart, to be honest, isn't it? The idea that because Palestinian civilians are protecting a Hamas terrorist who shares their ideological base is somehow different I'm lost for words. I can't form a sentence that can honestly express my disgust at that comparison there.
And also the whole logical of it all, it doesn't really stand up to scrutiny. It's like she just cobbles together words that they kind of sound like an argument, but it would be easier for the listeners if she just came out with Israel bad, Israel bad, Israel bad for about 15 minutes until she's finished the show. At least we will understand what she's on about.
Alejandro.
Well, I got another thing, aside of Mark and Richard's point, which I truly agree. I think one of her points is, hey, the only thing that you're concerned is that they're from your group. And to some extent, it is. What Tucker Carlson is essentially, the people that he's pandering towards, is just his tribe. And his tribe, he thinks, is all Christians in the world. And she's essentially saying, hey, you should also care about this other tribe. Why why think about in those terms? That's essentially taking away all the instances that allow you to judge this topic, that allow you to think clearly about what is right and what is wrong in this conflict, and who is right and who is wrong, and what are the means in which you can fight it. And essentially, she's just saying, okay, let's ditch that. What is happening here is someone is dying, and you should not only think about Christians, you should think about everyone dying. Okay, pretty bad argument, if any.
Next clip.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say I agreed with everything in that interview, or I agree with everything this Lutheran pastor has said in the past. I haven't consumed or listened to everything he said in the past. But I do feel that given what I heard in this interview, the weird backlash that you're seeing from conservatives isn't really fueled by the content of the interview itself. It's more about the fact that Tucker Carlson is drawing attention to Palestinian Christians and the persecution that they have experienced.
By Nero?
Richard.
Sure. I'm not going to agree with everything he says. I mean, she's just emphasizing there that don't confuse me. I'm not joining Tucker's tribe. I'm not suddenly on Team Tucker here. Don't make that mistake. I don't like him, but he happens to be right on this, and I want to underline that again. That's what she's saying. No more than that, really.
And her dissociation from the work of the priest also comes from the fact that this priest kind of celebrated October the 7th. He didn't come out saying it's a shame, but I think there's a post where I can't remember exactly the point he makes, but he goes way far away from condemning Hamas and the event of October 7th. So in case somebody's seen this clip, she's just making sure she's not associated herself with the priest too much. However, when he talks about how bad Israel is and how good anti-Semitism is, she's quite happy to follow the old priest and go down his line. Again, he thinks the same things I think, so he's got to be a good man, isn't it?
Alejandro.
Yeah, she's saying, I don't endorse everything that this guy has said, just the awful stuff, not the really, really awful. That's it.
Yeah, all right, let's play the next clip.
And decide that your Christian faith requires you to support a foreign government blowing up churches and killing Christians, I think you've lost the thread.
And look, a broad thing that I kind of take issue with in regard to this exchange and the conversation surrounding this exchange is that it doesn't matter what the religion of the innocent people getting killed is. I don't care if they're Jewish, I don't care if they're Muslim, I don't care if they're Christian. The loss of innocent life or the devaluing of human lives is what disgusts me about this entire war, about this conflict.
So, it's interesting, if you listen to a lot of what these people say way out of context, you could agree, you know what, there's a problem here of devaluing human life. That problem is the biggest feature of what Palestinian culture is. That is what Palestinian culture is. That is why they went in by the thousands, slaughtered anybody they could come across. The people they took hostages were treated horribly by the Palestinian people who were cheering in the streets. So that's the issue there. So yeah, if innocent people are killed, that is something you should be concerned about. Concerned enough to actually think, why are they being killed? Who is at the source of the problem here? And that should be your enemy. If Israel is your enemy, then you are not on the side of human life. Richard.
Yeah. I mean, the only ones dehumanizing, demonizing, and devaluing human life, as you say, are Hamas and the Palestinian people. on October 7th and since, and those cheering for what Iran tried to do at the weekend as well. Another example of it. So, and the fact that you don't care which religion it is means that you've got this religion equivalency going on, and you've not looked at what religions are arguing for. Now, we all obviously, we don't believe in any religions. We're atheists here, and all religions are wrong. But the premises that are coming out of certain religions and the arguments based on them are, you have to evaluate them on those terms. You have to evaluate them on the texts, on the leaders, and on the followers. And it's on the actions of the people in accordance with the ideology of that religion that is important. So you can't just say, I don't care what religion they are, when you've got the evidence in front of you that one is for life and one is for death and martyrdom. And you're claiming they're the same and they're just all humans. Well, you're flawed argument from start to finish.
This is the part of the video where she's actually pleading with the audience, stop ganging up on Carlson. He's saying that all Palestinians are good, you know. Why are you criticizing him? And the equivalence of the disgust about the fact that lives are not treated equally. Well, hang on a second, lady. If lives should be treated equally, why don't you go to your friend Palestinian and say, stop dehumanizing your own women, stop forcing them to wear scarves and treating them like second-class citizens, because we're all human, all lives are human. No. She only has concerns about sticking a wedge between the righteous and the correct response of the Israeli who foster individual rights and protection of rights versus the so-called right of these so-called Palestinians, these Arabs, who, because they're Arabs, demand to create their own state. This doesn't make any sense. The violence clearly comes from one side. How many suicide Israeli bombers have you ever come across in your life? That doesn't stack up. They're creating a massive package deal between human lives and the action that certain humans perform. And by just talking about human lives, you just ignore that some humans behave like savages and others behave like civilized people.
Alejandro.
I mean, I think that both the audience of the Young Turks and the audience of Tucker Carlson coincide in many things, and one of the things in which they do is the thing you were mentioning, Razi, like, I care about lives without looking at any context, without looking at what's happening behind all of this, what the real context is, why they are dying, who started the war, who is right, who is wrong, what is the morality of war. Any pertinent questions that could be asked are set aside. And it's the same as the audience of Tucker Carlson, which who's basically, what they want is to say, hey, this tribe bad, this tribe good. And to that extent, I think that the audience of the Young Turks is at least less deteriorated mentally than the one of Tucker Carlson, but not because of that they will succeed, but actually I think they will fail, because while one is able to think about life in terms of humanity, one is unable to think about those terms, but rather, this collective mean that venerates a cross is mine, this collective that doesn't, and everything is set apart is not, so goodbye. And I think that's pretty terrible. And I think what I think will happen is that at the end, people like Carlson will take over some of the audience of the Young Turks.
To the person in the chat saying you can debate atheism, and I'm sure you'll end up with God at the end. So we had, I think, at least once on this channel such a debate, right, during back in 2021 when we had that show, Yaron Debates Europe, on the channel. I don't know how much of the audience ended up, converting afterwards, but yeah, it's always an interesting debate to have, and I'm sure we'll have it again on the channel. Something about the way Anna looks at things really reminds me of her boss, Cheng, who, when he talks about the numbers, he talks about the number of Palestinians supposedly killed more than Israel. If it's like 10 times than Israel, what Israel is doing is 10 times worse than October 7th. Yeah, that is not how you value human life. That is how you dehumanize. You take the human aspect out of it. Let's go to the next clip.
So I mentioned Dan Crenshaw earlier, Republican congressman from Texas. He saw the conversation. I don't know if he saw the whole thing, but he was very triggered by it and put out a statement on X saying that this is who Tucker is, a click chaser. Tucker's MO is simple: defend America's enemies and attack America's allies. There isn't an objective bone left in that washed up news host's body. Mindless contrarianism is his guiding principle, buttressed by his childish tactic to just ask questions. I don't think that it is a childish tactic to ask questions. I think these types of conversations are important.
Yeah, well, there are different types of questions. But anyway, Richard.
Yeah, well, let's start with that one then, shall we? The just ask questions bit. Look how she drops the just there, because the just is crucial to understanding what the tweet is about. Because this is the argument that people like Tucker, people like Piers Morgan use all the time. I don't agree with what I'm saying. I don't agree with what my guest is saying. I just ask the questions. I just ask the questions. I let them float out there, and then I don't challenge the answers because I make no moral judgments about what I'm hearing in response. That is what the just ask the questions means. So for her to then willfully twist that and drop the just and say, well, what's wrong with asking questions? We need to get to the answers. Is deliberate and very revealing. And of course, in the tweet, what's going on is you've got it's right on right here. So obviously somebody from the left loves to see a bit of civil war between right on right. So they're going to certainly shine a spotlight on that. And of course, they're going to criticize the fact legitimately that Tucker Carlson has become a contrarian, which just means he's against everything that's the mainstream, which is what leads you down the conspiracy theory route on everything, because you're just being against the mainstream. And of course, just being against stuff is no way to form an argument if you don't understand the premises you're working from. You're just taking the opposite of what everybody else says, is still following what everybody else says, it's just with a minus sign in front of it.
And unfortunately, he's a professional contrarian, so he goes even against reason and the facts of reality, and that's why he comes up with all this kind of crap he does. But the argument that this conversation needs to happen, well, yes, they do need to happen, but if you start dropping the context, you start dropping and picking and choosing what you're showing to your audience and what you're commenting on, it's just ludicrous. You just not seeing the big picture. You're just focusing on the bits that you want to stress and the points you want to make, and you're just using bits from somebody else's conversation to effectively bolster your argument. Talk about buttressing an argument. The good thing I took out of this clip is that she can read.
Alejandro.
Well, to some extent, it's perfectly valid to ask questions, but to ask questions whenever you want to really know something. And very clearly, this isn't about that on behalf of Tucker Carlson, but on behalf of Anna, here are a couple of set of questions that maybe she should be asking herself. Like, who started the war? If you don't want any war, and yet you think that the October the 7th attacks were hateful and reproachful, how do you stop them from happening again? What is the alternative to Israel behaving as it has been behaving so far? what do you and how do you judge the people who have been supporting the taking of hostages, who have been hiding them and helping them hiding them? I mean, there are plenty of questions that also should be asked, but that's just one set of them, and you very clearly aren't doing so. So if you really think that certain questions should be asked, there you go.
Yeah, I didn't want to bring this up, but some people in the chat were commenting about Anna's dress. They're just asking questions. Anna, is that okay? Yeah. The point is the questions should be, not all questions are created equal, if you will. Thank you, Alexis, for the generous super chat. Alexis says, "Dear Razi, you referred early on to Tucker Carlson as a quote thinker. I am respectfully paying that super chat so that it never happens again." I think I walked it back, but yes, 20 pounds is the cost of me never referring to Tucker in that way again. I will try. Anyway, let's see if the next clip convinces me to refer to Anna as a thinker.
There's more. He says that Tucker wants you to believe he is the last place you can go for the truth, that he's the only one brave enough to reveal the elitist lies being told. This nonsense about Christian mistreatment in Israel is just the latest example. Well, I mean, there has been mistreatment. There's absolutely been mistreatment of Palestinian Christians. Are we gonna pretend like that doesn't exist? That's not a made up thing. It's not something that Tucker made up. It's not something that, the pastor he was speaking to made up. It's something that is well evidenced, well documented.
Well documented is one of her favorite phrases, isn't it? Well documented is something that she always says when she doesn't show any evidence of something, or she doesn't have an emotive clip that can go with it, that can pull on the heartstrings and bypass the thinking mind. So yeah, that's definitely something I spotted her doing throughout. And of course, isn't it her side and that frequently ignores examples of anti-Semitism and claims they're made up? She's as guilty of that in a different realm as she's accusing the other side of. That's what I see.
I don't recall anyone ever denying the fact that Christians have not been abused in wherever in the world, to be honest, because when you put a religious person against somebody from another religions, well, one of the two is wrong. They're both wrong, but one of the two is more wrong than the other. So they will end up fighting with each other, aren't they? Especially if they are particularly savage. They come from parts of the world that are not particularly clever. They will end up fighting with each other. But the mistreating of Christian is just a word, really, isn't it? You don't exactly go into the causes. You don't exactly tell me who's mistreating whom. Because chances are Christians in the Middle East are not mistreated by Jews.
Alejandro.
Well, I have nothing to add to that. In essence, go ahead, Razi.
Oh no, I thought you meant that was it. Go ahead.
Yeah, but in essence, I think that she's hiding, like, who is she saying that Jews have mistreated Christians in Israel? I mean, certainly you can document one case or a couple of cases where that has happened, but to think that has been something systematic or anything. And what she's actually doing is probably an equivocation, saying, yeah, Christians have been mistreated throughout history. But as Mark and Richard said, that has been the story of every single religion across the world. I mean, even Jews, maybe they have been mistreated too as well. I don't know. Someone has to tell me more about history. But anyways, that's also really stupid.
SC Junk says in the chat, Razi, now you mentioned that it is a dress fail. I was just listening to the program, not watching it. I never called it a dress fail. I said people were commenting on her dress, and we could do a whole show talking about her dress, but we think, the ideas she's expressing are bad, and because she's prominent enough, they're worthy of discussion. And yeah, so asking questions is a good thing, but you should ask the relevant questions. If you're looking at the Middle East, the questions you should ask isn't why is Israel targeting Christians, which is not a thing. It's why are medieval savages slaughtering Jews, and why is the West not calling for their defeat? Those are relevant questions, and I would love for Anna to answer in whatever clothing she chooses to wear for that show, to answer why it is that that is the side that she takes. Let's listen to the next clip.
First, let's talk about Bethlehem, where this pastor is from. So 78% of Bethlehem's Christians said that they were leaving Bethlehem because of the Israeli occupation, while only 3.2% blamed the rise of Islamic movements. 12.5% attributed them leaving Bethlehem to both. And that's according to a poll that was done back in December of 2006. So
yeah, Richard.
Oh, I do love a poll. I do love a poll that's nearly 20 years old in a place where you can't really poll it. I mean, how irrelevant is this from beginning to end? How relevant is this to any of the arguments that you're talking about in any of the rest of the program, apart from the fact that you like the answer of the poll? And isn't that what polls are for? Polls are to be used when you like the answer they've got, and you don't need to look at the methodology, and you don't need to look who was asked, and you don't need to look when they were asked. You just need to go, look, I've got a number, says it agrees with me. Look, that's proof, isn't it?
Amazing. She's got data. She's got numbers. She must be right. Of course, she also forgets to mention that Bethlehem is actually in the Palestinian Authority occupied territory. So that might be a reason why Christians are leaving. No, surely not. It's just because the Israelis are so bad that even the Christians are running from them.
Alejandro.
UED. I have nothing else to add. She won me. Sorry, Razi. I think a 20-year-old survey is going to settle the thing.
Yeah. Also, regardless of when the poll was taken, it is possible for the majority to not be right on stuff. That is also a metaphysical possibility that I know will shock Anna. But let's hear some more from her.
The Daily Wire's Andrew Klavan also weighed in saying, okay, so if Ben Shapiro, a patriotic American Jew, cares deeply about America's great Jewish ally, that's disloyal. But if Tucker Carlson spreads anti-Israeli distortions and lies in defense of terrorist murderers holding American hostages, that's patriotism. Got it. Well, I mean, I watched the interview. I didn't see any example of Tucker Carlson defending Hamas or justifying what Hamas did. But what Klavan did here is a common tactic, right? Where they put words in people's mouths to make them appear as though they're coming from an anti-Semitic place.
So what Anna is doing here is a common tactic where when you support Islamic terrorists and you don't really want to put it in those words, you present it in ways that are, you skirt around the issue. You pay lip service where necessary to even condemning the attacks. We've seen even Owen Jones do that. And then you go through, you spend your time, your bandwidth, you have limited time on your channel or whatever medium it is that you use to communicate ideas. And you spend that time telling the world why one of the sides is the victim and the other is the perpetrator. And if you look at this conflict and you say, well, the Palestinians are the victim and Israel is the perpetrator, and then you go through whatever propaganda the Palestinians write for you, like death toll numbers, like the made up stories about a famine and starvation and so on, you completely ignore Hamas, except once in a while paying lip service to say, look, when they slaughtered people in their homes and at a music festival, that was not okay. Then you are clearly showing the world which side you're on. And sometimes people, like to distill statements to their essence and then point them out. So, Anna, you are a supporter of the Palestinians. You are a supporter of the people who sent out the terrorists on October 7th. You are a supporter of the people who cheered for them. And that is the truth of the matter, even if you don't say it, and even if we need to put those words in your mouth because you refuse to be fully honest. Richard.
People don't say I'm an anti-Semite, I'm a racist. What they choose to criticize or choose not to criticize is what reveals those things. So when you criticize someone as being anti-Semitic, it needs to be based on the fact of what they've said or what they haven't said, and it becomes obvious from that. It's not because they hold up a sign saying that explicitly, although you can be forgiven from looking at some of the marches in London and New York, and they come pretty damn close to doing that anyway. I think one of the things you keep seeing here is that when people choose to, they seem to have their fingers in their ears and their head up their arse. I don't know whether that's anatomically possible, but it's certainly what they're trying to do. And of course, it isn't possible, and it is a lie. It's proof that it's a lie every time. It's the fact that he knows clearly when someone is being anti-Semitic or not, but it's not really good to reveal that yourself, to acknowledge it yourself, so you choose to ignore it.
The fact that you just mention what you want and ignore the fact that the whole interview that Carlson did was anti-Semitic. The whole point, or as I said, having a Lutheran priest in a Palestinian Authority city was just to bash the Jews. There's no way about it that during the interview, there was never an acknowledgement of the fact that Hamas are responsible for what's happened, that Islam is behind the ideology that moves Hamas, and never a thought for the hostages who are still held by the people in Gaza. There's no way around that one. You don't need to be an expert in geopolitics and Middle East or even media studies to understand the kind of evasion she's going through.
Alejandro.
What I think it's most interesting about this, and revealing also from the tweet that she's taking about, just to move away the attention from her, is that there is a split in the right. And we have talked about that. I think something that is pretty evident. I think the right is struggling to think about this issue. Are we going towards a more nationalist and therefore anti-Israeli perspective, or do we stick with that? And as Richard mentioned a couple of minutes ago, it seems that the left and people like the Young Turks are smelling that like sharks and trying to snatch upon that and trying to make evident that there is indeed this wide discrepancy, and they are actually pushing for the worst elements within the right to brew up, and I think that's disgusting, and it's going to come back to them, sadly.
Well, unfortunately, we only have one more clip of Anna. Let's play it and see what she has to say.
Because, look, to the Israeli government's credit, when some of the extremists on their side have violently attacked Christians, they have spoken out against it. I wish they would do more to protect people. We don't see enough of the Israeli government protecting people.
Yeah, Richard.
Yeah, it's that last sentence is the only one she really wants to say. We don't see enough. That's the bit she really wants to say. She has to pretend briefly to show that, oh yes, the Israelis do care, but only that's to get over. That's like in the same way that people make a brief acknowledgement to the fact that October the 7th occurred and that was quite bad, wasn't it? But really, let's talk about the other issue. So it comes out of the same category, really.
This is the bit that make me really lose it. To say that Israel is not doing enough to protect people when Israel is actually allowing its own young people who are conscripted in the IDF to die in order to protect Palestinian civilians, people in Gaza, the same people who murdered other Israelis on October the 7th, and who are currently hiding hostages and not telling anyone where they are and not freeing them, is just absolutely evil. To go down this route when Israel is showing stupidly altruistic morality, it is doing out of its way to feed the Palestinians, to feed Gaza. It's moving tons of food into Gaza, and earlier on the TDO we see what happens to it. And they're accused anyway to starve and genocide and not caring enough. To be honest, if you refuse to fight the Palestinians, if you refuse to retaliate on Gaza, you deserve this kind of criticism. You deserve to effectively be played by the left and by the Carlton right as well, because you allow them to criticize you for the good things you do. You shouldn't do. The only good thing you should do is to protect people in Israel, to get rid of Hamas, get rid of any single threat that's making Israeli life impossible right now.
Alejandro.
I completely agree. And this kind of thinking essentially reveals the kind of audience that they're trying to pander at. They are either not smart enough to think about what would trying to save more lives or being more careful mean, or on the other hand, they don't really care. I mean, one of the great teachings of objectivism is that altruism just is a break on your mind, which essentially tells you causality doesn't matter, causes doesn't matter, effects doesn't matter. What you need is to palliate suffering, especially if it comes from you. So it's those two kind of mentalities playing together and trying to attract anyone that is willing to give them.
Sarah asks in the chat, is Anna that dumb or malicious? I definitely go with the second option. I don't think, I think very few of these people, are stupid. I think they know very well what they're doing. And yeah, like my previous point about, Anna complaining that people put words in their mouths, the pro-Palestinian side, they choose what it is that they want to focus on. They choose what it is that they criticize. So they talk about, innocent civilians and what they're going through and so on. And they only say that in relation to what Israel is supposedly doing, and not what, not what the Palestinians are doing to their own people, not the this idea of the Palestinian Authority being the alternative to Hamas, but not any other country in the Middle East. And they're right to do so if they're going to be in the sense of, their worldview, if they're going to be consistent with it, because those countries are more along the lines of their values than Israel is. So yeah, I think they're not stupid. Anna definitely is not stupid. She is very much a bad person. And with that positive note, Alejandro, anything you want to promote? Anything about where people can hear more from you?
Just, I want to promote the Ayn Rand essays playlist that it's in this YouTube channel. I think we did a great job there. And if someone wants to know more about this philosophy, that's a great way to start.
Yeah, this was a weekly show that streamed live for about a year and a half, I think. Every week, we discussed a different essay by Ayn Rand. By we, I mean the people who were on the show. Alejandro was hosting it, and James Valiant was there. Don Watkins was there for quite a few of the episodes in the beginning. Yeah, great series to listen to, and of course, read the essays. Richard, Marco?
Yeah, I just want to mention the Briefly Objective, the sister channel to this one. If you see in the description below, it says for shorter content, go to, and there you'll find the link to it. There you'll find edited clips from this channel, from all the shows on this channel, distilling the key arguments across all of the things we've been talking about into like 2-3 minute clips with video and audio to back up the message contained within them that are perfect for social media feeds and for getting a really crystallized version of each case.
I'm Razi Ginzberg on X. I'm also for Hebrew speakers on the Yaldei Midrachov podcast every Monday and Friday at 5:30 p.m. Israel time, 3:30 p.m. UK time for people elsewhere. And and I'm also here. We're going to be back here tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. UK time with the Daily Objective, 6 p.m. UK time with a reality show. Thanks, guys, for joining me on the panel. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll be back here tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.